Herzlich willkommen.
Cordial welcome to today's event, Afghanistan's Strong Women. My name is Mikhail Fanizadeh, and I'm the coordinator of VIDC, and I'm responsible for migration and development with a focus on the Near East. Now, together with me, I have here Dr. Edith Schlaffer of Women Without Borders, and we may accompany through this evening. Now, the host of today's event, second president of the National Parliamentary Council, Doris Bures, cannot be here with us. Unfortunately, she gives you her greetings, and she will be represented by the Parliamentary Vice Director, Dr. Susanne Janistin-Novak. A warm welcome to you. Now, welcome also on behalf of the VIDC and Women Without Borders. Now we see here the hosts of today's evening right next to me. It is great for me to be able to welcome several representatives of the Corps Diplomatique. At the foremost, it's the Ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, Her Excellency Manisha Bakhtari. And we will later on have the opportunity to listen to her speech. I'm really pleased that Ms. Vice President of the Administrative Council, Dr. is also here with us. Anna Sporra, thank you very much. And I'd also like to name a few actors of this evening. The director of the VIDC, Magistra Sibylle Straubinger. The Executive Director of Women Without Borders, Laura Kropiunik. The Director of the Voice of Women organization, Soraya Paksad. Welcome, Soraya. And the founder of the Association Five Stones, Magistra Mosama Regel. Welcome. And the Afghan women rights activist Husna Jalal. We are looking forward to your contributions. Now, I'd like to also say a warm welcome to the active people here, some who were active representatives of the National Parliamentary Council and members of the Federal Parliamentary Council. Now, a greeting goes to you, dear ladies and gentlemen, and also those who are listening via live stream. We've got also to tell you that the event is going to be held in two languages, in English and in German. So if you need headphones for simultaneous interpretation, please do get them now. So on Channel 1, we will be able to listen to German, and you will be able to listen to English through Channel 2. I'd like to thank Ms. Gallo and Mr. Schmolz for the work of the interpretation. It's a pleasure to be here and work for you. Thank you. Thank you. And an honor, too. And I'd like to ask you to switch off your mobile phones. Those of you who came very early actually could look at a few pictures which we will also be presenting to you after this event. El Halb-Tajik is one of the artists who made them. She was born in Herat, Afghanistan, and she came to Austria in 2015 with her husband. Her first exhibition took place under the slogan Stop Violence Against Afghan Women. This exhibition was organized by the association Akis. Thank you, Tajik, for being here with us. I have seen you somewhere. Oh, there you are. Well, Edith, I may now pass the floor to you, and you are our first speaker. Thank you very much, Mikhail Fanizadeh, for the friendly invitation. It's an impressive lineup, I may say. It is amazing that there is a platform for all of you. We really enjoy this in order to be able to support women in and outside of Afghanistan. I'd like to also thank once again the second president of the National Parliamentary Council, Doris Bures, who cannot be here with us. She really is sorry about this. We have spoken about this, and I think this is a good support from an official body. And I think this is extremely important. I think we also know how important this is on the level of support for the mobilization of our movement in favor of women in Afghanistan. I'd also like to thank the VIDC and the director of the VIDC for the good cooperation. It shows the spirit of cooperation. Two NGOs actually have organized this event, and we think this is a very important topic considering the situation in Afghanistan, who is important for all of us. It's not a distant problem in a distant country. It's about all of us. Women in Afghanistan have been fighting every day for their rights, for their freedom, something which we have, something which we enjoy. And I think this is how we must also support them. This must also be our struggle. And those strong voices, those strong women which we'll be listening to today, and the Parliament wants to give them a stage. So thank you very much for being here. Now, Vice Director, Dr. Agustin Novak, and we have spoken about the situation of women in Afghanistan not too long ago, already here, and we're really pleased to be able to organize this event here as a sign that we are standing behind all women in Afghanistan. I may ask you to come up to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, now images make us witnesses, but some images, some pictures tell us so much that we remain speechless. Now, the picture of the international airport of Kabul in August last year is one of those images. The chaotic situation when the international troops took off and the humans who wanted to climb on top of planes left us speechless. It was overnight that the future perspectives of many people, particularly of women and girls in Afghanistan, were destroyed. The power takeoff of the Taliban for many was the repetition of a nightmare. The ideological situation exclude women and girls from education programs, they exclude them from the public life without accompaniment. They have to wear certain clothes, and many of them have lost their jobs. Now, all these restrictions actually push women back into the private sphere under male control. It is the endeavor to want to keep women from the participation of public life and make them powerless. However, there are still those very courageous and solidarity women who don't give up and who want to give hope to others by their activities. It is a great pleasure to have three such women here who are going to tell us their story, who may give us who do the utmost possible, and with their courage and creativity have found ways of fighting in favor of Afghan women. Soraya Paksat, already under the first Taliban regime, tried and has made the impossible possible. She organized in the underground education areas for women, and she created safe spaces for women who had to leave violent relationships. After the Taliban took power again in August last year, she had to flee She had to flee because her life was menaced, and she created a refuge for those women menaced by violence, and she created places. Husna Sayal, who is the daughter of the first and thus first female presidential candidate of Afghanistan. She's part of a generation who has grown up in a window of opportunity. The possibility is that her mothers fought for them. She also had to flee. Today there is a network, and she tries to support women in Afghanistan via her network led from outside called Young Afghan Women's Movement. With more than 5,000 young and ambitious Afghan women, she tries to make sure that the destiny of Afghan's women is perceived on an international level. Together they are trying to make their dream reality of a good Afghanistan in the future. Now, a quotation of Nadia Hashimi, who had Afghani roots, leads me to the third speaker of today. She says, it's never easy to leave your home, particularly when there are only closed doors. Masona Regel is one who keeps those doors open and builds bridges for those who want to live in Austria. She came to Austria as a child. Afterwards, she went back to her mother and her only parent and her 4 siblings. She then came back to Austria and found a second home and a second family. She knows what it means to live between 2 worlds. And with this knowledge, today she tries to fight for a good cooperation between migrants and Austrians. She fights for integration, exchange, and working perspectives. Ladies and gentlemen, it is quite clear. In order to be able to improve the situation of women in Afghanistan, we need a lot of commitment, we need perseverance and support. For the time being, we are confronted with many different crises who definitely also merit our attention. The economic crisis, the energy crisis, the pandemic, the climate crisis, and also the war in the Ukraine. These are shadows on our everyday life. But we are not going to forget women in Afghanistan. Afghan women do need international solidarity. We see women and girls in Afghanistan. We see their fate. No veil, no closed door can hide them. We will not allow them to become invisible. We are looking over to Afghanistan and we're trying to help them. We're raising our voices in favor of them and for them. 2 who always do this and always invite to a dialogue are Sibylle Straubinger, the director of the Vienna Institute for International Dialogue and Cooperation, and Edith Schlaffer, who is the founder of the Association Women Without Borders. And my thanks and my recognition go to both of you and your teams for the dialogue with the Afghans community and women worldwide, also for your solidarity with those who need your solidarity and support. Ladies and gentlemen, the international community knows about its responsibility for the women in Afghanistan. This is shown on the one hand by the fact that there have been negotiations for financial support, and thus women's rights were made a main topic. It is also shown in the fact that in the resolution of the Council of October last year, the Council, as the header of human rights, clearly says that an Afghan government can only get international recognition on a long term if it includes women. The European Council calls the Taliban as a de facto government to enable access of women to the labor market, access to earning, access to sports facilities, etc., and allow their active participation in all public and private spheres of life, and to promote them. Malia Zulfikar, the former Afghan ambassador in Germany, actually once considered the relationship of the sexes as a pendulum, which goes between the extreme poles in a moderate way, back and forth. Too fast has this pendulum stood still after having been created in a tedious way for many decades. But the past also shows us that the pendulum can also swing towards a situation there where women are included. And Soraya Paksat, Husna Jalal, Mason Maril, and many others are continuing to work along these lines in favor of this. With their courageous work, they are showing us that a life in freedom and self-determination is not something that goes without saying. And I think the following papers from you will inspire us and will contribute to having the pendulum of the genders to once again go into the right direction. Thank you very much for your attention. Ms. Vice Director, I'd like to thank you for your very clear and cordial words. Thank you very much for this inauguration. And I'd now like to ask Ms. Sibylle Straubinger, who's the director of the Vienna Institute of VIDC, Vienna Institute for Dialogue and Cooperation, very important. I'd like to present your institute. You have been the director of the VIDC for some years already, and before you were also a parliamentarian in Vienna, at the local parliament in Vienna. You've always been active for women. It's important for Afghan women to know that there are activists here in the room who support them, who are behind them, next to them. Ms. Sibylle Straubinger, you have got the floor. Thank you very much.
Distinguished Madam Deputy Director, distinguished Madam Ambassador, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's really a pity that our Deputy Parliament President cannot be with us today, but I really like to thank you on behalf of VIDC and Women Without Borders, because it's not self-understanding to look into what are women feeling like at the other end of the world, and that 1 year after takeover of power is still looking into it, and even if it's got a little out of the focus of interest. And I'd like to thank you particularly because not only we, but the whole Afghan diaspora really feels this invitation into the Austrian Parliament as a great appreciation. So thank you very much. And I would also like to thank Women Without Borders for the very good cooperation, also when preparing today's event. And I'd like to explain how come we as VIDC are co-organizers and co-inviters to today's event. The Institute, as part of its focus on Near and Middle East since 2014, has been intensively engaged with events in and around Afghanistan. At the beginning, we wanted to inform about why in 2014 and then also 2015, so many refugees from Afghanistan were coming to Austria back then, to Europe. So what was going wrong in that country that as a result of 9/11, 2001 was liberated from the Taliban by the US and its allies. But our interest was not only due to the increase in asylum seekers, but also due to the fact that members of the Austrian armed forces were deployed in Afghanistan, and the International Security Assistance Force, and thus also the Austrian armed forces were also accountable for what was happening in the country. Then afterwards, we invited civil society intellectuals to Austria to trigger and promote exchange, and from the very beginning on, we wanted to be always on the forefront and always wanted to be informed of what was happening in Taliban. And already then, many people warned against a renewed takeover of power by the Taliban. And among other things, it has always been emphasized that there can be no sustainable peace in Afghanistan without the inclusion of women in the peace negotiations. In April 2021, we held a webinar with former MP Fawzia Kofi and the first female Minister for Women's Affairs, Sima Sama. In August 2021, the much feared and known to all event occurred with the takeover. Our activities also had to change because all our contacts from civil society, science, and journalism had to leave the country, or at least, well, we can also say were able to leave the country. And now, in the meantime, supporting the Afghan diaspora in their search for a sustainable perspective for Afghanistan has certainly become a central task, not only for VIDC, but for all the stakeholders involved. And now, at the end of my introductory note, I would like to return to the beginning when I spoke about that actually the media spotlight very quickly is directed to the next crisis, and unfortunately, we are having plenty of them. And part of our work is to keep the situation in Afghanistan from being forgotten. And amongst other things, we have a series of articles on our homepage under the title Life Under the Taliban. We have been trying to let women and men from different regions in Afghanistan have a say. We wanted to hear directly and have them report directly how they are doing, and I'm really sorry to say that it's shocking to read that reports and also to read these reports that are full of despair in the women's reports. And at the same time, alongside with this despair, you also feel this strength in the reports of the Afghan women and also in their demonstrations in Kabul, their courageous demonstrations in Kabul, and the very strongly committed militant women struggling and fighting here in diaspora and in Europe, here in Austria and in Europe. The title Afghanistan Strong Women was chosen for today's event on purpose, deliberately, because the women, the strong women of Afghanistan, they give hope, they give courage, and they have to be heard. And thank you for being here and for listening to them today. Thank you. Thank you, Sibylle, for introducing VIDC's work. And now I'd like to invite Lara Krupionik to come up here on stage. She has been leading and developing international projects at Women Without Borders for the past 7 years, with a focus on the West Balkans, East Africa, and Southeast Asia. Since 2022, she is the new executive director of Women Without Borders. Women Without Borders is an international nonprofit organization that since 2001 has been committed and struggling for the participation of women at all levels of civil society and government. And with their global network for preventing and countering violent extremism, she offers women a platform to help shape a new security architecture. Lara, I ask you for your opening remarks.
Thank you. Dear President Bures via live stream, dear Vice Director and Dr. Jansky Novak, dear Ambassador Bakhtari, dear colleagues from the VIDC, dear team of Women Without Borders, ladies and gentlemen, what brings us here together in the Austrian Parliament? It is the appeal from Afghanistan, the appeal of women who are daily targets of terror which coins their everyday life. They are political prisoners of a system that accuses them of only one thing: to be women. We all know where we were at 9/11. Every man and every woman from Afghanistan knows where they were on the 15th of August last year, the fall of Kabul. That was the date that abruptly ended hope, awakening and change for women. Women already at the first Taliban regime were the face of resistance. They took social life underground and ensured, especially with a network of secret schools, that their daughters were not left behind. Then, 20 years ago, the Allies toppled the first Taliban regime. They were overthrown, according to the collective narrative, over their misogynist measures. The international troops came as so-called liberators. Women resolutely opened the window to the new world. They made their way into schools and universities. They demanded co-determination in political assemblies. They fought their way into the public sphere. To move freely, and this does not go without saying, was a daily triumph and a rejection of the old order. The engine of change was women. They helped build this society with global support. Education, work, and the promise that women's rights are synonymous with human rights gave them strength to help shape the new society. There were a lot of resistance. A global women's alliance gave them hope. In August 21, the international troops hoped to end an endless war, and they did, without preparation. The front lines moved. Today, 20 years later, there's still war, a war against women. For a short time, the international community was blinded by deceptive hope that the Taliban, 2-0, might be willing to reform. However, the new Afghanistan comes in the old outfit, and it seems even worse than feared and than before. The first disturbing harbingers of rapid regression were the banning of girls from school. For the longer girls are banned from education, the more time those in power gain to cement their rule. Excluding women from education and blocking their participation in shaping society is the foundation of this emirate. This is how they guarantee their autocracy. Gender apartheid, we can see this quite clearly, is once again the pillar of political structure. Supported by a flood of new regulations, the requirement of dress codes, the ban of traveling without a male escort, the list is very long. Above all, the way in which these commandments and prohibitions are enforced is shocking. They are enforced by force. The reports that reach us are shocking and disturbing. Women who dare to resist are persecuted, abducted, raped, and some pay for it even with their lives. Margaret Atwood's Gilead is a reality for the women in Afghanistan. Women today are once again caught between the fronts. On a daily basis, they have already fought for too much, risked too much, gone through too much to give up everything again. A conflict is raging over acceptable ways of life and the panic of a gender disorder that is perceived as threatening. Everything is at stake: chances, opportunities for life, for happiness and for freedom. We stand with the women of Afghanistan because their struggle must also be our struggle. Thank you very much. And I'd also like, thank you very much, Laura, for your strong words who depict an incredible reality. But it is still a reality for millions of women. I'd like to ask Ambassador Bakhtari. I'd like to present her first and foremost. She's one of the most courageous women I have ever been able to meet. And I'd like to present her in the way she presented herself. I heard this numerous times and I read it as an ambassador of the Islamic Republic, but not as an ambassador of the Taliban. Thank you for these very clear words.
Ich möchte noch kurz
I'd briefly, please be patient yet, but yes, you may come ahead. Yes, you may come ahead. Yes, I'd still like to briefly make an enthusiastic appeal to you. And this is a quotation which I read months ago. It is easy to look away from Afghanistan. The attention which Afghanistan got in August last year has not continued. Please do not forget Afghanistan. And this is why we're here today. You are a very strong voice. You are standing here in favor of equilibrium, equal rights. You do fight for equal rights for women. You aren't where everything which women in Afghanistan are not allowed to be anymore. This is amazing. You were chief editor, university professor, gender specialist at an NGO, ambassador in Scandinavia. The list is very impressive. But this also shows the success story of Afghan women in the last 20 years. You accompanied Afghan women in their struggle, and you are not giving up today either. Thank you very much for being here, and I would like to pass the floor to you now.
I thank you so much, dear Dr. Edith, for your kind words. I'm overwhelmed with this introduction. Excellencies, distinguished guests, my Afghan fellows, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I wish to extend my gratitude to the second President of the National Council, Madame Doris Bures, although she is not here, to Dr. Susanna Novak, Deputy Director of the Parliament, for organizing this event in cooperation with the Vienna Institute for International Dialogue and Cooperation and Women Without Borders. I'm very grateful for the focus and support you're giving to the women in Afghanistan and around the world in this time of need. After more than 1 year of occupation, the Taliban were not capable of creating a representative and accountable government that ensures the respect for the rights of all Afghans, especially of women and girls, that meets the humanitarian and economic needs of the people. Unfortunately, not all Afghan women and girls enjoy the same opportunities as other women in the world. Since August 15, 2021, Afghan women continue to face persistent gender-based discrimination, segregation, apartheid, and violence, as well as other restrictions to their basic human rights. The Taliban's hostility towards women is an everyday occurrence, where women have been barred from attending a school, barred from work, and have been imposed a strict dress code. Afghanistan has become the world's first nation to officially limit schooling based on gender. The Taliban occupation of Afghanistan affects all Afghans, but particularly women and girls. Afghan women are watching their rights disappear in front of their eyes. The group has reenacted draconian policies and directives that banned girls from attending secondary education and systematically erased women and girls from public life by restricting their fundamental rights to work and play an active role in society. In the past year, hundreds of Afghan women, both in Afghanistan and in exile across the world, have marched for their rights and protested against the Taliban rule. In Afghanistan, women protesters have been met with violence. Women have been attacked, beaten, wiped, and shot at. Just 3 days ago, a girls' education center in West Kabul hit by a suicide bomber. 51 young girls from Hazara ethnic group have been killed immediately, and more than hundreds are severely injured. That is pure misogyny and genocide of our Hazaras. I allow myself to suggest 1 minute silence to pay tribute to those who paid the ultimate price for education. I thank you. In the face of these threats and this violence, Afghan women have stood strong. The protesters were attacked, and they did not let the violence stop them. They did not give up. They have so much incredible courage. We salute these women. We stand by them in the fight for law, justice, freedom, democracy, and for equality. Afghanistan's women are strong, but alone. We have witnessed way too many times women fighting for their rights without men by their side. We must convince the society about the advantages and necessity of gender parity and generate momentum to realize that gender equality is a necessary prerequisite for peace, human rights, prosperity, and well-being of all. Afghanistan's women are by themselves without any national and international support. The international community has left us behind without any strong support from international leaders and with no support from women leaders in particular. Of course, I'm grateful for this event, and I see that in Austria we have this support and this attention. I'm really grateful for that, for this event, and for your solidarity with Afghan women. Now more than ever, Afghan women and girls need to support and solidarity from the international community. You, the esteemed international community, have a crucial role to play to support Afghan women and ensure their rights. Afghan women are counting on you to uphold your rights. We must mobilize platforms and leverage our global networks in support of Afghan women and girls. Women's rights must be protected and advocated for. Women's rights is human rights, and human rights is for all. I thank you.
Thank you very much for your call for action. We in this room, and also us in this room, we must mobilize platforms. We are women, men of influence here. We have the power to do something, to mobilize networks. Thank you very much.
Now we go on to the video parts. We have the possibility to see 2 short videos produced by Women Without Borders. And just imagine, later on we will be speaking very briefly about these 2 videos, but the women that we'll see now live in Afghanistan. They are in a very difficult situation, and they are so courageous. You can't really imagine how courageous they are, because under the current situation, go out on the streets. So I would really invite you to play the 2 videos. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your words. They are really courageous. It's not imaginable for us, but this extreme situation probably would give us all this strength, because they have the feeling they can't lose any further. You will see two women who, one of them is showing her full, is not showing her full name and face, and she's hiding, and we told her, please don't run this risk. That's my identity. Sorry, this is the one showing her face, and she says, I have nothing more to lose. I want to show my face. I want to show my name, and I want to give this a testimonial. But the second woman, also very courageous, but nevertheless, she's thinking about her family, about this great group of people around her that could be in danger. 2 weeks ago, they filmed themselves without showing her face. No, first she showed her face, but then we got the message that the situation was getting more and more critical. So this is really going very quickly. So within 2 weeks, it became more critical. So now she asked for your understanding that she does it in an anonymous manner, and we gave her an alias name. She's also very courageous. They were out in the street in Herat, and she had us informed through our contact person. I'm prepared to show my face if my sisters are there. We said, no, don't show your face. Words are important. The words have power. And we don't help anybody if something happens to you or to your family. So just to understand the context of the videos, what it means to women to speak out loudly.
My name is Tuba Lutfi. I am a civil society activist from Panjshir province and a Tajik citizen of Afghanistan. 1 year ago, on August 15, 2021, our country fell in the hands of terrorist group. We, the women of Afghanistan, have been enduring almost 14 months of human rights violations. We were and still are systematically excluded from all spheres of public life. However, the women of Afghanistan resisted. We took to the streets in different cities of Afghanistan and demanded our fundamental rights. There were immediate intimidation attempts with the warning shots, pepper spray, and beatings. But our movement was organic and our demands clear. Our movement started from few women in the beginning due to the climate of fear Taliban created, but grew day by day. Whenever a catastrophe breaks out in any part of the world, women are always the first to burn and suffer. Women are the silent victims of every conflict. We witness numerous war crimes by the Taliban, such as torture, kidnapping, forced confessions, rape, and murder of our fellow protesting women in different provinces across Afghanistan. There isn't any institution to protect those women and investigate the Taliban atrocities. There's, however, one question on everyone's mind: have the Taliban changed? Today, I, Tuba Lutfi, stripped on my right under the constant threat of violence. Ask the women, feminists, human rights activists, and the international community, have the Taliban really changed? If not, then I demand an answer. Why? Why has the international community abandoned us? Why do we receive deafening silence in response to our struggle and suffering? I urge the international community to take immediate action instead of choosing silence or half-hearted condemnation. The issue women of Afghanistan face today requires immediate action, not hollow words or empty platitudes. We carried with us 1 year of pain and invisible wounds. Everything was against us, and we rose and resisted. Now it's time for the international community to hear our demands.
سلام، وقت بخیر. دانشجوی مقطع دکترا در رشته جامعه شناسی در شهر روشنفکر و باسواد متولد شدم. خوشبختانه پدرم یکی از مشوقان اصلی و حامیان اصلی ادامه تحصیل برای فرزندان خود، به ویژه فرزندان دختر هست. پس از استیلای طالبان در افغانستان تعداد از خانم‌ها برای احقاق حقوق زنان و برای برداشتن موانع و محدودیت‌هایی که از جانب طالبان سد راه زنان قرار گرفته بود در واقع به خیابان‌ها ریختن و مبارزات خود از خیابان‌ها شروع کردند. در کنار این خانم‌ها ما شیوه مبارزه نرمتر انتخاب کردیم که همانا کتابخوانی هست. در واقع در داخل این جلسات کتابخوانی که پس از استیلای طالبان تعداد از خانم‌ها دور هم جمع میشن، در مورد ادبیات غرب، ادبیات شرق، مطالعات زنان، کتاب‌های مختلف میخوانیم و بحث و بررسی قرار میدیم و به این ترتیب به تقویت تفکر و همچنان آزادی فکر خود سعی میکنیم که از این روش استفاده بکنیم. چرا این روش انتخاب کردیم؟ به دلیل اینکه طالب حتی اگر زن سرکوب میکنه و انکار میکنه ولی فکر زن نمیتونه سرکوب بکنه و تنها راهی که میتونه زنان به استقلال فکری و آزادی فکری برسونه در واقع همین کتاب هست. میدانیم که طالب یک ایدئولوژی هست و این ایدئولوژی با رویکرد مرد محورانه خود زن همتراز خود نمیدانه، به زن باور نداره، اعتماد نداره، زن اسیر و برده خود فکر میکنه و به نحو این ایدئولوژی زن به عنوان یک کالای جنسی و همچنان یک ابزار برای تولید مثل تلقی میکنه که به تولید فرزند به ویژه فرزند پسر بپردازه. خب این ایدئولوژی هم از تاریخ سرچشمه میگیره و هم از تفسیرها و برداشت‌های دینی اینها. من فکر میکنم که این طلسم بدشگون عقیدتی و فکری و ایدئولوژیکی باید شکسته بشه و این شکستن از او امکان پذیر نیست تا اینکه زنان آگاه نشن، زنان با آزادی خود پی نبرن و قدم بر ندارن و پا به میدان نگذارن و همچنان ریسک نکنن. ما این ریسک پذیرفتیم، پا به میدان گذاشتیم و اولین قدم ها برداشتیم تا اولین کاری که انجام بدیم ذهنیت زنان عوض بکنیم تا اسارت نپذیرن، تسلیمی نپذیرن، با آزادی فکری برسن و به این ترتیب بتونن به از طریق اراده و بالاخره قدرت فکری خود به آزادی در اجتماع و بالاخره در عرصه‌های مختلف دیگر بپردازن. قبل از اینکه خواسته باشیم بحث ادامه بدیم یا از جایی که وقت کم هست فقط به گونه کوتاه پیام داریم به جهان، به ویژه زنان جهان که در شرایطی که بیش از 16 میلیون زن در یک گوشه جهان از تمام حقوق خود محروم هستند، زنان دیگر فقط در نهایت به اعتراضهای گفتاری روی آوردن و کار خاص انجام ندادن. میخوام همین گپ بزنم که این یک خیانت به همجنس هست. نه تاریخ این موضوع فراموش میکنه و نه جهان. مطمئن باشین یک روز جهان به تاریخ شما رو قضاوت میکنه که در یک گوشه جهان زنان اسیر بودن، ای در حالیه که در گوشه های دیگر جهان زنان آزادانه زندگی کردند و زنان اسیر به حال خود رها.
Let me just add one sentence. These women stand up for many other women. And I think they are the invisible, not registered prisoners of the Taliban system and their isolation captivity and cannot be underestimated. And we don't know how long it's going to take. And this is up to us to help. We'd like to applaud, first and foremost, those two courageous women who have stood up with the utmost courage. I know that you will understand, you will feel it. It is important to listen to those stories. We must never forget. We must continue to listen to them. We must never forget what is happening there, and we must never forget the courage of those women. They are so courageous that they have also gone to the streets in order to protest and struggle for the women in Persia. This is amazing. This is great. I would now like to also give a warm welcome to Soraya Pakzad, one of those courageous women. Soraya has been here in Vienna with us before. Those were better times. The situation was precarious already back then, but she could actually present the work of her organization in Herat, and she could continue to work in Herat with problems, with difficulties, but it was possible back then. Soraya Paksad is a women's rights activist. We have already heard from her during the inauguration speech. She founded the organization Voice of Women, who taught women to read and provided shelter for women and secret schools. Just imagine, those were the secret schools of which we have heard so many times. We know good cooperation partners who have been active in the association archives. The young women who went to those secret schools and who made their medical university degrees were already active back then. The organization is still active today. It's becoming very difficult. There are women's shelters, and they were very much endangered because the male perpetrators have also been freed. It was not only the Taliban who were freed, but the violators and prisoners were freed as well. She is a woman who has been recognized and awarded prizes by the international community. Let me just name the following. Something which in the time of Afghanistan has been a very good award was the Peace Jirga on board. She was one of the participants in one of those big movements. They tried to find a way out. She got a big award, and now finally she got the Anna Maria Manoliti Prize in Italy, who is awarded by the Italian president for particular performances of women for women. Soraya Paksad, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Michael. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Before I start my speech, I want to express my deepest condolences for the families who lost their loved one in a terrorist attack on Friday, killing and wounded thousands of young teenagers from our Hazara ethnic groups. Indeed, it is a genocide attack and a crime against humanity. This is our life. My thought is with the victim and their family. I believe everybody in this hall knows what is happening to women and girls in Afghanistan. But what is more evident and with the most significant concern is that decades of progress on gender equality and democracy have been wiped out. The rights of women and girls have been almost dismantled, and Afghanistan is facing a desperate humanitarian and economical crisis. I remember the time between 1996 and 2001 when under the Taliban regime, Afghanistan was almost entirely forgotten by the international community, pretty similar to the current situation. Girls' education was banned completely. I found myself obliged to fulfill my moral responsibility where I struggled to educate Afghan girls in covered and underground school at my home, constantly fearing being caught and punished. So despite all the odds, in 1998, I created the Voice of Women organization with a mandate of protecting, supporting, and empowering women and girls in Afghanistan. I'm glad to tell you that over the past 2 decades, the Voice of Women saved hundreds of lives of women by providing safe refuge, education, vital legal aid services, and access to justice. But unfortunately, since August 2021, we have been going through significant challenges, including seizing our offices, looting our equipment, imprisoning and torturing my family members, my colleagues, and encountering fear because of our history of women's protection. But despite all challenges and obstacles, our operation hasn't changed much. We learn how to struggle under the current situation, and our team are committed to remain in the country and support Afghan women and girls. And now, a cold winter approaches, the economy collapses, hundreds of families are displaced internally, and vast amount of them are moving to the neighboring country to leave Afghanistan at any cost. Extreme poverty, psychological problem, forced and child marriages, and various types of domestic violence are widely seen among the displaced families. There is no specific address for women to refer to their challenges and problems. The safety of those who are working as a human rights in Afghanistan must be an absolute priority. There must be a supporting address to support and decrease their exposure to GBV threats and harassment. I am taking the opportunity through this podium to request the international community, especially the EU and Austria, to extend your help and pay attention to the dire need of Afghans. Every aid to Afghanistan must be tied up and provided de facto with a condition to help reach the women and family who are in danger and ensure the process is gender responsive. The role of women's-led organizations and CSOs must not be neglected. It requires continued advocating, funding, and supporting them to maintain their current activities to operate in a new environment in Afghanistan. And it's required continued funding for women's organizations to build their capacity to be able to continue their operation. Please use your power by any means to put pressure on Afghan government to eliminate restriction on women's rights and civil society activities, to let their expertise or their use in our work. EU delegation meet anytime with Taliban. Please pressure to have Afghan women in the delegation. And also, I think the political participation of Afghan women should not be forgotten. Thanks for having me here, especially for the invitation of the second president of the National Council of Australia, Doris Bures, together with Women Without Borders, and many thanks to the leadership of VIDC for their outstanding work to being such a robust platform for Afghan women to put the challenges of Afghan women to the eye of international community for today's silent world. Because the situation of Afghanistan is really need the support today. Let's work together to push the gender equality forward. Equality is the soul of freedom and liberty. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Soraya. Vielen, vielen Dank.
Thank you so much. Soraya is one of these very active, very committed, and important women that have come out of the Afghan society in the past 30 years, we can say, with Soraya, but also in more recent past, we have other representatives, and one person that is very important for the Austrian community, and we've invited her, Masuma Regel. We've already heard a little about her history and why she came here to Austria. She was then socialized, educated here in Austria, and in 2018, she founded the association Five Stone in the city of Graz with the idea of giving an official framework to the very diverse voluntary work in the field of integration, because that's one of the problems that we are having here, that the Afghan community is very active in voluntary work, but there was no real framework, and Masuma, together with her colleagues, they founded this frame in the city of Graz. And Five Stone refers to a game that requires special skills and is very popular with Afghan children. Masuma's family lives in Afghanistan, and I know that you are constantly in touch with them. And of course, you also share the fears of your family members. Masuma, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for this presentation, Michael. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for organizing this event here. Unfortunately, I cannot start in a positive note with a lot of energy because this topic is very heavy. It is a burden on our shoulders, and it's very difficult. It is difficult to feel and be celebrated as a strong woman. And I'd like to start by saying that I do not need an applause as a strong woman or for being a strong woman. I have prepared a speech, but I think I'm going to say many other things because I have listened to other people. It was already said that I came to Austria because I was injured during the war, and due to my origin, I am now an Austrian. However, I do still have this heavy burden, this heavy heritage, Afghan heritage on my shoulders. Hundreds of years of poverty, decades of war, difficulties, having been left time and again, hope which comes up and is then gone, an improvement of the situation in order for the situation to become only worse later on. Many Afghans who have been able to flee abroad, to leave Afghanistan, but some of them who have succeeded in remaining as well are sometimes happy and to have opportunities, but they always have to fight, and the burden of shouldering two worlds. On the one hand, to have responsibility for your family, and at the same time, you need to have a lot of power in order to continue working in a meritocracy like in Austria. One world was crushed, the other world which doesn't want to have us. And it needs a lot of mental and spiritual strength to endure the powerlessness. Now, today, we should not only applaud to strong women, we must take them seriously. Austria must hear them and must take them seriously. I have been in a media marathon for 1 year since the Taliban have seized power. I have given many interviews in many media, in the newspapers, on television. I have spoken at many events. I am glad that there is an interest, that people take the time to listen. But I'm frustrated about the fact that nothing has happened in Austria. I cannot be standing here and applaud the strong women, whereas I cannot help any of the endangered women. Nobody has been taken up here in Austria. It's very difficult to get asylum here in Austria at the time of the power takeover of Taliban. Some parties have actually spoken about this issue, and they've spoken about how it will be possible to grant asylum to some Afghans afterwards. It is a very difficult situation, and it is very difficult to talk about this, even if we're all thankful to Austria. Now, a whole year of talking in favor of Afghans here in Austria has robbed me of many of my forces. There was a lot of panic about a year ago, but there was always this spirit of struggle in order to make something possible. Now, a year later, I must try not to have you see my frustrations. I have to try not to be cynical, and this is very difficult, and it robs me of a lot of energy. Austria says very often, we have already 45,000 Afghans here. One of the biggest Afghan communities abroad. Yes, 45,000 people are grateful for being here. But by saying this and by proceeding like this, it's also 45,000 people who Austria tells your sorrows are not important to us. We are talking a lot by saying our family members still live in Afghanistan. These people are in danger. These persons are in danger. We show videos of women who need to hide. And still, Austria says your fears are not important to us. They're saying this with the policies that they are proceeding with. Now, with the Association Five Stones, we actually round up many Afghans living in Austria. And it is obvious that, especially now, it is more than ever important to act in unison and also organize activities outside political life. We organize hikes, yoga evenings, musical evenings, all of this in order to not have to think about all these woes and worries, in order to take away the burden which is a burden on us, and in order to show that we can be here for each other, we can understand each other, because nobody else understands that the topic of strong women, the topic of oppressed women, the topic of the war, poverty and hunger are not theoretical issues which can be presented one evening alone. It is not sufficient to write an article, maybe be paid for it. It is our lives. Each minute of our lives are determined by this, and it makes everyday life very difficult, even if we are in a very rich country. We esteem being here, but we cannot enjoy it. What would it tell about us in the future? We know these two worlds. What if we forget the other world by being here in this world now? When we organize our yoga retreats, self-care events, when we concentrate on our food, on our everyday life, when we concentrate on our careers, the titles which we can still get, when we go out celebrating with friends, and if we also forget about the responsibility we have. This is what not many people can do, forget that it is a responsibility being here, a responsibility for others. And a lot of young people who had to leave and who were able to leave Afghanistan to Germany, Canada, to Germany, Canada, and also Spain. When I write to them and when I'm happy about the fact that they could get out, what can I say? If my family cannot live in freedom, what can I do here if my friends cannot leave Afghanistan? I know leaving Afghanistan is not the ultimate solution, particularly in a big country like Afghanistan with almost 40 million people. But for many people, it changes the whole life, all of the future, particularly for children. And I believe that Austria could participate a little bit in trying to lessen the burden, this emergency situation. Of course, we cannot take up 39 million people. Of course not. The demands which several organizations have formulated, some people have formulated, in order for the extremely restrictive provisions for family unifications should be extended beyond the husband and wife onto siblings. I want for much endangered women to be able to be taken out of Afghanistan. As it was said in the video, they should not be empty words and platitudes, but there should be concrete measures for the people suffering in Afghanistan. I want to be able to be here and say the following without automatically hearing a chorus which says, what's this supposed to be? Be glad that you are allowed here. I don't want to hear this. Thank you very much.
Danke, Masoma.
Als nächste Diskussionsteilnehmerin, und wir machen das jetzt in Form einer Diskussion, möchte ich Ihnen gerne Husna Jalal vorstellen. Husna Jalal hat einen sehr soliden akademischen Hintergrund. Ich möchte gar nicht in Details gehen, sie hat wahnsinnig viel erarbeitet, erreicht. Aber sie ist auch, und das ist ganz wichtig, seit ihrer frühesten Jugend, eigentlich fast seit Kindesbeinen an, Peace and Security Activist. Und zwar deshalb, weil sie die Tochter der ersten Präsidentschaftskandidatin, der ersten Frau, die es gewagt hat, gegen das afghanische Patriarchat ganz offiziell anzutreten. Sie ist Tochter dieser Mutter, hat ein wunderbares Rollenbild in ihr gehabt, aber eingebettet in viele, viele andere Rollenmodelle. Please join me on stage, Husna. It is such a delight to have you here. Thank you. Thank you so much. Husna lived in Afghanistan until the fall of Kabul, and I think 8 days after the fall of Kabul, you managed to be evacuated, and since then, Husna lives with her mother in The Hague. Ich gehe noch kurz mit der
Well, I just to continue with her introduction. Husna, you're one of the women that, with great decision, a lot of dynamic, as a young activist and as a young student, helped to rebuild Afghanistan. You are the face of the Afghan youth. You did everything to build a new nation. That's an incredible achievement. And of course, it was hope. So hope that the future belongs to you. You believed in this, and that, of course, you had many setbacks. So we also spoke about it, but you never gave up in spite of the situation after the fall of Kabul, and continued with your activist spirit from exile, making use of the digital platform. Could you hear the interpretation?
I hoped it would be translated, but actually we had a long conversation, many long conversations. Husna knows about the introduction, so it's the praise of your activity, of your bravery, and of your courage to be part of the change-making in the country now from exile, along with all your fellow fighters, I would say, because this is truly an uphill struggle. Husna, I would like to ask you the first question. You are one of the many faces of female resistance of your country. We have seen faces of the resistance. We have seen the women who bravely go to the streets, take to the streets. We have learned from women who take to more silent forms of protest. But you decided to be a resistance for the exile women and for the women inside the country. How do you see yourself in your work, in your fight to contribute and give hope to the future of the young generation in Afghanistan?
Thank you. Is it working? Thank you, Dr. Edith, for the kind words and your nice introduction. It's truly an honor to be here today and to address the Australian Parliament and to be the voice for the young generation of Afghan women who are living in Afghanistan and who are in exile. Last year, on 15th of August, Afghanistan fell into the hands of an extremist group. And as a nation, we lost all our achievements. But as women, we lost our most basic and fundamental right. Right after the collapse of Afghanistan, we have been seeing videos and posts and messages coming out of Afghanistan. Women are resisting. And this is non-violence resistance. by young generation of Afghanistan in Kabul and other big cities of Afghanistan. This is unique, and this is very inspiring. They are the new face of Afghanistan. They are leading the resistance, the non-violence resistance in Afghanistan. When last year Taliban came into power, the first thing that they did was they closed the girls' school, and they banned girls to go to secondary school. So basically they did not, and they still do not want Afghan women to be educated. And they want the current generation to be illiterate and uneducated. They want us to be silent. They don't want us to talk. They don't want us to know what's going on in Afghanistan. But I think one thing that they do not know is that the current generation, especially my generation, who grew up after the international community intervention in Afghanistan, is completely different than the previous generations. We are not giving up on our country. That's our country, that's our land, and we will do anything that is needed.
This is a very strong message to the women within Afghanistan and also to the women in exile to mobilize together to build and rebuild what has been lost.
Definitely. I mean, it's also very difficult to talk from a very privileged stand sitting here in Vienna and talk about those who are struggling every day in Afghanistan. But we are also not sitting and doing nothing. We are doing our best to raise awareness and spread the atrocities and women oppression that are right now going on in the country. Women are resisting with their voices, women are resisting with their pens, and women are resisting in the streets of Afghanistan.
And you believe that your sharpest tool of resistance is education, to bring women back to school, to empower them by taking the power through knowledge. And we have heard that from one of the women who was speaking to us, that the power of knowledge is truly something that will bring women forward. And this is the big fear of the current regime, that women will be very powerful. And you mentioned something I did
Definitely. When you educate a woman, you educate actually a society. And in a highly patriarchal and conservative countries, they don't want educated women. They don't want strong and with women with voice. So the first thing that they did after coming into power, they announced that the girls should be not coming to school. So it was very smart and strategic. But one thing that makes me very hopeless and, at the same time very helpless, that it's even more than a year that international community and civil society organizations and our feminist sister outside of Afghanistan are just watching or seeing that when the situation will change. But it's now more than a year that girls are not able to go to school, and the situation is getting worse and worse.
And I think even more so, your efforts of collaboration to bring now young women together, to create these networks, to raise the voice, to make them heard, is absolutely important. So you do whatever you can to empower the spirit of the women who still have a voice to be change makers, to appeal to the international community.
Definitely. I mean, whether international community is going to support us or not, women of Afghanistan will not stop resisting against the current de facto authorities. We have a saying in Persian that after every dark night there is a sunny day. So even after this dark night, there will be a beautiful, sunny day where all girls in Afghanistan would be able to go to school. Women will be able to go out without, the male member of family accompanying them. And we will have an Afghanistan that we are striving for, we are working hard for it, and we are fighting for.
You were talking about peaceful, non-violent resistance. Non-violent resistance is the way, definitely the way to go. And I think this is the way where women truly can lead, because this is something the majority, I think, worldwide women believe in peaceful resistance. So when we talk about peacemaking, that means we need dialogue. You had a dialogue, Afghanistan had a dialogue, the Doha peace talks and negotiations. When you envision future peace conversations, what do you want to see there?
Before answering your question, I want to shed some light and using this platform as an opportunity to reach my voice to Australian authorities and parliamentarians here that we need to also go back and see and think what went wrong. Afghanistan didn't collapse in one day. All the achievements didn't go in one day. It was a systematic collapse. We need to understand that first, and then we can go forward. First, the Bonn conference was a failure. International community didn't think well and didn't, make good Afghan allies, and they entered Afghanistan. And result of that was corruption. Result of that was injustices. Result of that was that Afghanistan was a democratic country, but we had a lot of problems, even in terms of democracy, rights, and freedom. And now that if we want to go forward, and if we want to bring any change, and if we want to change the current situation of Afghanistan with the help of international friends, we need to talk with the right people. We need to not include the repeated faces, those who destroyed the country. We all know that. I'm sure you guys also know it. And I'm sure the experts who are working with EU and US government, they know very well. So real representatives should be included. And as soon as possible, an inclusive government should be formed, where every Afghan's representative should be included in that government. And all the ethnic groups' representatives should be included in that group. So that would be a meaningful peace. That would be a meaningful reconciliation.
Thank you for highlighting this. And I think inclusive peace means women included. They are half of the society. Their fair share must be visible, must be represented. I think this is a very important suggestion, and this will change the course in the future of potential peace table meetings, and I think there must be peace that is negotiated around tables. I would like to thank you, and still trusting in the international community by appealing to the international community to be strong security allies, to be strong security allies of women and strong security allies of the people in Afghanistan. And I would like to thank you from all my heart for the work you're doing day by day, reaching out to huge networks of women and bringing them together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Redet, and I hope the situation for my Afghan sisters will change soon, and international community would stop interacting with Taliban and they start taking concrete actions, because it's been now more than a year and we only hear interactions and talks and we don't see any actions. So I urge and call on international community to pressurize the de facto regime and for the reopening of girls' school. And there should be also a ban on their travel and so on. So thank you so much for having me here. Thank you. Michael.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Vielen herzlichen Dank.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to the three speakers. Great applause to all of you. Slowly, we are getting closer to the end of this event. I'd like to thank once again the second president of the National Council, Doris Bures, for having the opportunity to hold today's event here. We've already mentioned several times, this really means a lot to us. Also, it means a lot to the whole community that their concerns, their fears are being heard. Now it's our task, Women Without Borders, and also VIDC's task to continue supporting them in implementing or in making their wishes come true. And I'd like to refer to 2 points that we should not forget, that here in the Parliament are very well placed. Soraya Taksat mentioned that humanitarian aid is needed. Austria, of course, is part of the European Union, so of course Austria has a share in humanitarian aid in Afghanistan, but Soraya Taksat and other people have the concrete demand that it has to be conditioned to a certain purpose. So women and other discriminated groups have to benefit from this aid, and this should be a precondition for having this humanitarian aid. And Massimo Regel mentioned this another point. We would want to achieve from Austria that women at risk and other people at risk are received by Austria. So saying we are making contribution, but not somewhere there where nobody sees it and where it cannot be really controlled, but that we receive women here. This would be also one of our wishes. It won't be easy. This is something that we would wish for. And of course, we'll continue in dialogue with these very committed women in Afghanistan. And I'd like to thank a few persons without who it wouldn't have been possible to organize tonight's event. I'd like to thank Juliette Bendele of the Office of the President of the National Council, Iris Lechner, the team of the Parliament. Thank you very much. Elisabeth Kasper of Women Without Borders. She helped organizing a lot. My two colleagues, Ali Ahmad and Marianne Hausner, who helped in planning and with all the social media tasks and so on. Thank you very much. And thanks, Edith. And of course, now it's up to you to make the closing remarks. I think you have thanked really extensively. It was important because, of course, it's been quite an enterprise to organize this event and to have you all here. It is a very important platform, an extremely important platform, and I'm calling it platform. Maybe you cannot make sure that there will be visas for Afghan citizens, and we are just before elections here now. But what we can do now is that to use this platform. This is just one example. Platforms like this one will help to fight against the forgetting and neglecting. And this is a mandate that we have. So neglecting, forgetting, and silencing. These are three appeals to each and every single one of us. And women at the moment in Afghanistan and also other countries, but we are now speaking about Afghanistan, are systematically humiliated and of their human rights, and they are deprived of their women's and human rights, and they're marginalized completely. We've heard from many women that say, we go out on the streets. We spoke to women in the underground during the winter, women that were hiding, and they actually ran away from their houses to protect their families because families, sisters, brothers, fathers, they have to pay a price for the resistance of their daughters. It's not only the courageous young women, it's their large families that agree or don't agree with what their daughter does. And many told us during late evening talks, well, it's better not to die at home, but out on the street where I've made a difference and where my action has been seen and where I actively resisted the Taliban. That's the situation. And so that's our mandate, not to look the other way and to carry it not only in our hearts, but also keep it in our dialogues, in our conversations, and to find means and possibilities so this won't be forgot. So thanks for all the ones that have made this possible, from the top of the parliament down to the parliamentary activists, and of course our partners in VIDC and women and the team in Women Without Borders, and we all work in the spirit of Women Without Borders. So of course borders are necessary, but artificial borders that keep us away from that cut off our humanitarian field, and this is our moral responsibility. We're living in unsafe times, so by taking in women with an inclusive approach, we can build a new safety architecture, not only in Afghanistan, Iraq, but also here. It's also about us, about our values, about our attitudes, so how we'll live together. And there is only living together. There is no living beyond borders or in just an isolated, safe space. We are all architects of safety and security. Thank you. Adi forgot to mention that we'd like to invite you to have a small snack with us and a glass of something. And in the end, once again, we'll here in the stream, we'll see the pictures of Ilham Tajik. And so while we are there still continuing in our conversations, we can also look at her pictures. Thank you very much and enjoy the evening.